Hello, everybody. Welcome to 321 No Kiddin. I am Bobby the Awesome, and I am joined today by Pitz Quattrone. And we're going to talk about a topic I'm guessing you didn't even know you want to hear about, but once you dig in, it's going to be very yummy and interesting. So, welcome to 321, Pitz. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Bobby. Thanks for the invitation. It's great to be with you.
Well, I'm pretty stoked about this topic because I don't know anything other than just what I know from you. And before I pressed record, when you shared with me that this was instrumental, pun intended, in your recovery and your life, I'm just excited to share it with everybody. So why don't you start us off by introducing yourself, anything you would love to say, and then bring us into our topic.
Okay. Pitz Quattrone. I live in Vermont. I've been here for about 25 years. I grew up in the Philadelphia area. And at a certain point in my life, the didgeridoo came into my life. And that's if you're not familiar with that, it's an Aboriginal wind instrument from Northern Australia. A lot of people consider it to be the oldest instrument on the planet. No one really knows how old it is. Could be between 1,500 years and 40,000 years.
Oh, wow.
So it makes this really unique, mysterious, meditative, haunting sound. And I can play for you for a second if you'd like.
Yes,
So we'll
please.
set the stage and then we can talk all about it.
Now, that looks, what is that, like 4 feet, 5 feet tall?
Yeah, exactly. That one's probably about 4.5 feet.
Wow. And they come in different styles, it looks like, based on your backdrop.
Yeah, I make instruments and all these I made. Yeah, just like any other instrument, the longer they are, the deeper, the bassier they are. The short ones are higher and brighter pitched. But for the didgeridoo, for the sound to resonate properly, it needs to be at least 3 feet long. And even then, you're kind of pushing the limits of the physics inside the instrument. The ones that I like the most, I'm partial to 4.5 to 5 feet long.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just really coming into music, if that makes any sense. Like I've listened to the radio, for example, but I don't know pitch, tempo, vibrations. Like Paul, who I was telling you about, is teaching us notes and how to hum and all this stuff. So please forgive my ignorance if I don't know the lingo. Okay.
Yeah, no sweat. I try to break it down as easy as possible because I want everyone to know about this instrument.
So how did you, I want to do some of the fun stuff and then we'll dive into some of the how it helps people, but how did you discover it yourself?
Well, I've always been attracted to strange, unusual sounds. I was the kid in the back of the classroom making weird sounds, trying to make people laugh. The class clown, that was me, always in the back row. So, and then I grew up a little bit, and eventually I heard the didgeridoo in one of the Crocodile Dundee movies. So it's like, I was like, wow, it's underneath there. But like, whoa, what is that sound? It's way back there, but man, it sounds so cool. I want to know more about that. So I did a little digging and I found out that it was the didgeridoo. And so, okay, cool. So how do I play that thing and how's it used traditionally? I gathered all the information I could. And this was before the internet was really happening. So Amy, my wife, bought me a didgeridoo for Christmas in 1993, and it came with an instructional cassette. So that's the format we're talking about, a
Wow.
cassette. And it was super helpful. And I listened to what the guy said. The only thing was I couldn't see what he was doing. So I couldn't see his cheeks going and all the other things that happened. So I had to kind of figure those things out, but the cassette was super helpful. And then about 6 months later, I found a bamboo didgeridoo at a music festival. and it was really affordable. And the first time I picked it up and tried right in the Didge, I got the good sound. I was like, oh my God. It was a lightning bolt hit me. It's like, wow, there it is. That's what I've been trying to do. So that's kind of my step-by-step timetable of how I got into the Didge.
So does each one, obviously, if they're handmade and different, do they have different ranges? Is that the right word? Like, you seem
They
to be
have
dialed
different,
into what noise it's supposed to make or sound it's supposed to make.
yeah, they have different pitches or they play a different note. And the Didge is it's one long hollowed out tree branch. That's all it is structurally. There's no holes like a flute. There's none of that. There's a bell end that's open and then the mouthpiece end. And you flap your lips to get the first sound, your drone. And once you get that, that's your foundation. Then we can start adding all kinds of cool stuff on top of that by moving your tongue around, using your voice and your cheek muscles, puffing in and out. And then if you want to play continuously, you can actually breathe while you're playing and the sound is not interrupted. It's this process called circular breathing. So I can explain that in a nutshell, but let's tell everyone that studies have shown playing the didgeridoo reduces or dramatically or almost takes away sleep apnea. The British Medical Journal published a study from a doctor in Switzerland who had 25 sleep apnea patients. He brought in a didgeridoo teacher, and they played for 6 days a week for 4 months. And at the end of that period, the sleep apnea episodes dramatically decreased, in some cases completely disappeared. And that's because playing the Didge and that circular breathing thing I mentioned, it gives the internal muscles in your throat and bottom down here and also in your face, it gives all those muscles an internal workout. So they get back into shape, nice and straight, nice and strong. They're not flabby and blocking the airway. So that's what happens there. It's exercise for inside.
Wow. And I could visualize it as you were saying it. Like when we get thinner in the muscles, our bodies change. And I could picture, all right, that was cool.
Yeah.
I couldn't connect the dots on that. So I appreciate you explaining it.
Sure, yeah. So there's hard science behind it, and most people that come to me for Didge lessons are sleep apnea sufferers, and I do lessons online, in person, one-on-one, group settings, all of that stuff. And I've seen this help countless people. Just even from the beginning, in the first couple weeks, it increases your air capacity. It starts to open things up. And eventually, once you do that circular breathing, then it's like a launching pad to the benefits really coming through for you.
That's pretty spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
So what else? You told me that the Didge helped save your life. Do you want to share that about that with us?
Sure. Yeah, I've been playing Didge since I mentioned 1993 in my 20s, and my life could have gone in a couple different directions.
I
And I was
understand.
heading towards the dark zone. But the didgeridoo came to me, and also my wife, who is an absolute earth angel, and we're still together after 35 years. So the Didge offered me a healthy path. So luckily I was awake enough. I was like, all right, cool. I'm a musician. I've been playing in bands since the early '80s in different instruments, percussion mostly. But the Didge came to me and it was like, whoa, this is something, it's powerful stuff. This is ancient, powerful stuff that, dude, you better pay attention to because this is your chance. So I realized that and I was like, okay, cool. So now I'm playing the Didge and I had addiction problems with drugs and alcohol. And I can get into that if you want to hear, but generally, the Didge gave me a healthy path instead of the dark path. And there was a few years there where I was playing Didge and still using different things and drinking too many things. But eventually, and they were parallel. Eventually, the drugs and alcohol went off, and the Didge took me away. It's like, all right, dude, here we go. I'm going to give you a healthy life as well as a mission of trying to share this instrument with as many people as I can. Maybe it'll help someone else down the line. And in turn, this whole thing has evolved into a successful career for me. So it's like, thank you, Mr. Didgeridoo. I'm in deep debt.
Is that's a wonderful story. And the fact that you made like a choice and then it turned into a purpose. I love that it's a purpose and now you're helping people. And there seems to be like, it's wonderful when a addiction story can turn into a success story like that. So congratulations. And thank you for doing the work that you're doing, Pitz. It's really cool.
Thank you. Well, a dear friend of mine I grew up with, we met when we were 3 years old. He drank himself to death at age 46.
Mhm.
And that was another thing. It was like, dude, you can't let that stuff grab a hold of you like it did Brother Billy.
Yeah.
So it was a kind of a tribute to my brother, blood brother Billy. Like, all right, man, I'm still here. I'm going to do what I can and have you with me.
Yeah. It's tough and we can only do the best we can.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry about Billy.
Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right. So, whew, got me going. Got me going, Pitz.
Lighten it up.
Where do you, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but it's just curiosity. Do you know where didgeridoo, like, does the name, is it symbolic? Does it have some sort of a meaning?
Yes, the funny thing about that word, okay, the didgeridoo comes from the native people in Australia, the Aboriginal Australians. The word didgeridoo is not an Australian term, a native Australian term. It was made up by the first Europeans who showed up in Australia. They never saw this instrument before, they never heard it, so they made up a name based on its sound. Didgeridoo, didgeridoo, didgeridoo. So the automatopoeia thing, didgeridoo. So the real name for this instrument, the real term in the Aboriginal communities, and there's about 35 to 40 different names depending on where you are in Australia for the didgeridoo. One term that is accepted widely is the word yidaki, Yidaki, yidaki. So that's the real name for the didgeridoo. And in some areas, depending where you are, yidaki means short or mosquito didgeridoo, because the shorter ones are higher and brighter. It's like, it kind of sounds like a mosquito when you play it.
Wow, that sounds very Asian to me. It doesn't sound Australian.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So what kind of activities do you do? You said you made a career out of didgeridoo. And I love how you call it the Didge. It's like your old friends and you go way back.
Oh, yeah.
It
We're
just sounds
buds.
cool. But what kind of activities do you do?
Well, I do a lot of different things with the Didge. You know, it's living in Vermont. There's not really that many great jobs around, and I really don't want those jobs anyway. So I had to really diversify with the didgeridoo. So I make instruments and I sell those. I give lessons online and in person. I do school presentations, retreat presentations. And then I perform with different players from all over the world. And this instrument has taken me all over the place. So I really believe deep down that the didgeridoo is the most musically versatile instrument, because what it does is it puts that foundation underneath everything. It's not perfect for every song, but the songs and the styles or that it fits with, it really connects. So if I pick up any Didge back there, so it plays a certain pitch. So what I have to do is, okay, if I'm playing with a guitarist, pianist, or whoever, what key is that song in? All right, it's in the key of D. Okay, cool. I'll grab my D didgeridoo. Bang, and we're locked in right there musically. And then with the Didge, you can do all kinds of rhythms and vocal yelps and howls and accents and coloring stuff all over the song. So it's really versatile, and this instrument has taken me to crazy cool places like Greenland and Senegal, all over the US. Next month, I'm doing a 5-day residency at an elementary school in the San Francisco Bay Area where the kids make instruments. We perform at the end of the week, a big long concert for the community. So I offer a lot of different things with the Didge.
This gave me another idea.
Okay.
Um,
I like
okay.
it that you're thinking.
Well, because I like the idea of you sharing this with the world. I love that it's something unique. It feels unique to me. It's not commonplace to talk about our Didges. I'm fascinated by the music part, but when you're talking about the school, I have a girlfriend back in New York that just recently started a foundation. And one of their first grants they were issuing was to children in the music space. So as you were talking about schooling, she just popped in my head. So doing live, I'm glad I asked that question, because doing live presentations like that, I almost wonder if you couldn't do that in rehab. Like I used to call it arts and craft, but we did like painted bird houses, and like something like this seems to have more value. Not that I'm picking on my rehab, but I just wonder if that's a fit too. I'm just kind of talking out loud because I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah, I guess it would depend on the person involved and maybe the leader of that organization, if they were open-minded enough to talk with me and say, "Hey, what can we do?" And then it really depends on the people there, if they're willing to give it a shot. But what I do sometimes is I'll go to a school or a group setting or a museum, and I'll bring a duffel bag full of Didges with me. And if I have enough, and I sterilize everything ahead of time so it's totally sanitary, if I have enough, I'll towards the end of the discussion and presentation, we'll try to have everyone try the Didge.
Oh,
So I'll pass a few of them out, and then we'll see if we can get some sounds. And based on what I talked about in the presentation, hopefully they've listened and remembered some of those techniques, and we can try them all together. And that's really cool sound when there's 25 or 30 people in a room playing Didge together.
so they must not be that heavy.
It depends on the wood that they're made out of.
Oh, wow.
The traditional ones, going back to Australia, they're made out of various types of or varieties of eucalyptus. And eucalyptus is serious, hard, dense wood. Some of it, one of them's called ironwood for a good reason. So what happens in old school traditional Didges is, okay, it's a hollowed out tree branch. How do you hollow out a tree branch? So what the Didge maker does is goes around and looks for a termite mound near a eucalyptus tree, because what the termites do is they get into the trunk and eat their way up the trunk and out the branches from inside. And then the Didge maker will go around and knock on that branch and listen for how hollow it is. And the trained ear would know, like, okay, this one's perfect. No, we'll come back in a couple months and let the termites do their thing, or it's too far gone. So if it's a good one, he'll knock on there. And women make Didges too. It's not just a male thing. So the branch is cut off, and sometimes the bark is peeled right there on the spot, or brought back to his house or her house, to the Didge maker's house, and just let it be. Let it let it season and dry out, and then a few months later try to make that tunnel all the way down and then form the mouthpiece end. And I'll show you, form the mouthpiece end so it fits your mouth. That's all it is. It's a hollowed out tree branch. And then here is the bell end where the
Okay.
sound comes out. And after I make each instrument, I autograph it and put the year and what note it's playing. So, and then you'll see some Didge makers or didgeridoos, they're really wide bodied like this one is. So you really can't play it because it's too wide, because the air will be flying out the sides. So you'll see beeswax on some didgeridoos. I don't particularly like the beeswax, but its purpose is to shrink that diameter down so it fits your mouth while you're playing. Otherwise, you can't play something that wide. So I
That
don't
makes
really like the wax. So what I do on my didges, again, is I just form the end of the didge, the mouthpiece end. So it's already a natural mouthpiece. You don't have to add anything to it, and there's no mess.
So, first of all, the termites are gone, right? When the Didge people bring them back to their house.
Well, right there on location, they blow them out, or they put some little branches in there to get rid of the termites.
Okay. I
Yeah.
had to get past that part. And then my next question is, my intention was to talk about serious stuff. So remind me, we have to talk about serious stuff too, like health and all of that, but we've been sneaking it in. How do you know? No. Is it your intention to have a Didge play a certain key? Like you
Mm.
said, one played D, or do you find out after based on hollowing it out?
That's a great question. I love it. And you said you're not musical. That's not true, because that question proves to me that you're musical. So what I do is I try not to force anything onto the tree branch. I look at the tree branch and I see what it gives me, and I cut it to the length that my gut instinct tells me to. And then I form it and finish it off, do everything I need to. And then the moment of truth is when I first play it, I play into a digital tuner, a guitar tuner, or whatever kind of tuner, and it tells me what note it plays. And that's where it is. I don't shave off like a half an inch here or add something here to alter the pitch. I don't do that. And that's some of my didges. It really, you have to be a skilled player, because it may be like in the middle of two notes. But what you do with your playing technique, you can bend it so it's right there on that note that you want.
Wow.
Mhm.
It's fascinating. So you said that it came from Australia and that it was native and like you felt connected to it. Am I right in saying that you were connected?
Absolutely. Yeah. The first thing was like this, the novelty of the sound. And then the sound became more serious, and everything else I found out about it, I felt more connected to all the cultural end of things, even though I'm a mostly white guy who grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. This thing is ancient, and somehow I'm related to it.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Was Did your research take you to, was there tradition surrounding the Didge, your friend the Didge? Was there I just picture like ceremonies, and I don't know if it's because they're painted. Like, what did your research show you when it came to that stuff, the history?
Yeah, how is it used traditionally? Is That's the question. Here it is. The Didge is the original sound effects machine. So it's the Didge player's job to imitate the sounds of what's happening. So there's one person singing or telling a story. There's two or three dancers imitating the movements of what's happening in the story. And then there's one rarely, sometimes two Didge players, and their responsibility is to make the sound of whatever the storyteller is talking about. All kinds of nature sounds. So it's the original sound effects machine, whether it's a mosquito or rain hitting the tree branches or a stream flowing down, thunder, whatever's happening in nature, it's the Didge player's job to make that sound, to bring those words to life.
Wow. I can't even wrap my head around how that would be executed, but I'm going, okay, so that's where those sounds came from before technology. Uh,
Yeah.
that
You want to
added
hear, would you like to hear one or two just real quick traditional sounds?
yeah, I would. This is,
Okay.
yes,
So,
please.
all right. So the first thing is the lips. That's your drone. That's a constant. Once you nail that, you stay there. That's all I'm doing inside. So the first one is like, I guess you can hear me because I'm far away. The
Yep.
first one is the tongue technique. So there's a kangaroo bouncing around. When the kangaroo hits the ground and bounces, that's when your tongue moves forward. So
Okay.
that's a real quick example. And then you can bring your voice into things. And I'm not sure how this is going to translate on Zoom because sometimes the audio it gets a little wacky. So you can use your voice on top of the drone. Traditional sound, dingo barking, a wild dog in the outback, right? So it's
Yeah.
then so you hear how it sounds through the Didge. So just a real quick example of, and these sounds are ancient. What I just did is a technique that's been going on for thousands of years, and it's so cool because it's 2023. I'm making these sounds in this instrument, and it's been going on forever in my book.
That is cool. That is very cool. So I feel a little guilty. I feel like this has been more of informational than recovery show, but that's okay because I know it
Yeah.
can be used for recovery. Um, you have said, aside from sleep apnea, that there's other health benefits to playing the Didge. Do you want to talk about those a little bit?
Sure, we've touched on a few of them, but first and foremost, if you attempt to play didgeridoo, you must be relaxed. You got to be calm, chill, nice and easy. If you force it and I really want to play this thing, that's not going to happen. That's forget that. You got to go to the other end of the spectrum. So, number one, getting back to your question, it helps you calm down. You can relax, take a breath, maybe even like get into meditative stuff after a while. But first and foremost, chill. And doing just that without the Didge itself is relaxing.
Right.
So that's number one. And then number two is just playing the instrument. I mentioned earlier, just playing the instrument, you're using all this stuff in your lungs and throat muscles and face muscles, all these things. They're going to be called upon even if you're not aware of that. So what that does is it starts to open up the airways and gives you more lung capacity because you're really calling on those things that maybe you haven't before. I wasn't a wind instrument player before or brass. I didn't play any of that stuff. I was a percussionist. So this was like a whole new thing. Like, oh man, I'm making these sounds with air. So it calls upon your air capacity. So that's another serious benefit right off the bat.
Wow. Do you see them ever getting like mainstream, like in an orchestra, or you do?
Yes, and that has happened. There's an Aboriginal guy, I forget his name, but he sits in with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, and he travels around. I should know his name. His William Bard, I think. He sits in with different orchestras all around the world. So it really depends on the conductor, if that person is open-minded, and most of them are. And so he'll have a Didge section or feature a Didge in one of the compositions. But absolutely, like I said, I think this instrument can be a critical component to any type of music on the earth.
Yeah, I love it. As you were talking about the telling the story, and I don't I don't know if it's just where I'm at in my life and my journey, but I feel like it's more than just an instrument. Like I can feel that. I don't know if it's just the way that you describe it or whatever, but my brain's going to meditation and sound baths and like all of like you're not even saying all those things, but I feel like it just has this, I don't know, a purpose. I don't know how to explain what I'm feeling, but I'm feeling some kind of way about it.
Yeah, well, you're spot on. It's the vibration. It's the vibration from the Didge. I mean, I used to have like this magic mattress that had transducers in it, and I would put a microphone on the Didge. When I would play, the whole mattress would vibrate. But the sound bath thing, I play in this meditation ensemble that's based in Maryland, and we go around and 50, 60 people show up. They lay down on mats and we take them on a journey for 2 hours. And part of that journey is I'll walk around with the Didge and play on top of the person's body, top to bottom, middle, everywhere around, so they can they can feel it directly from the instrument. So yes, it's definitely sound bath, meditative, healing. Yeah, that's one aspect that I do, but it's not the forefront, but it's certainly part of my mix.
Wow. Pitts, is there anything that I'm not inquiring about because I'm so like fascinated? I'm a little tongue-tied here.
Well, there's examples of my music on my website, and that's myname.com. It's PitzQuattrone, pitzquattrone.com, or you can just Google Didgeridoo Vermont, and I'll be the first 75 things that pop up. But the music. Okay, I have some really fun original music of my own where it's in kind of like a rock funk jam band vibey setting. And there's a Philadelphia anthem that I wrote called Cheesesteaks and Tasty Cakes that I know you love. And of course, there's a didgeridoo solo in the middle.
Yes.
So there's some fun videos there, and in your smart speaker as well, Siri, Alexa, whoever it is, just ask for Pitz Quattrone, play Pitz Quattrone, and bang, I'm up there, and all the platforms I'm there.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I encourage everybody to check out Pitz's music. This is fascinating. If you're listening just on audio, I would check out the YouTube too, because this is really it's just neat, and to see it, you'd understand a little better what I'm saying about how it kind of speaks to you. Pitz, this has been a pleasure, and very informative. So thank you so much for being with me today.
That's my pleasure, and thanks for inviting me on the show, Bobby the Awesome. I love that title.
Well, thank you. The point is, there's two reasons. One is to remind myself on the days that I need reminded. And the other is to give people permission to acknowledge the good voices in their heads. And they should be, Pitts with pizzazz, or like it doesn't need to be, the alternatives. So thank you for acknowledging that.
It's positive.
It is positive. It's so funny. You're doing the whole man versus woman thing. I say something, it takes me 80 words, and you say something and it takes you 2. Like, you're very good at that. You did it a couple times, so I appreciate that about you. I need that gift.
Good. Well, thanks. I'm glad that worked for you. I'm just being me.
Love it. Well, thanks again, Pitz.
All right, Bobby. Thank you.